6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news bulletin. We start our news with the headlines. President Sisi follows up a strategic plan of water desalination, among other national projects. Foreign Minister Abdulati takes part in Oslo Forum in Norway. Israeli forces kill 35 people in Gaza. Welcome back to the news in detail. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Tuesday stressed that the implementation paths of mega national projects should be accelerated and periodically followed up to ensure its optimal performance in such a way that enhances assets development and utilization. The remarks was made over a meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, the Minister of Housing, as well as the Presidential Advisor for Urban Planning and the Head of Armed Forces Engineering Authority. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Mohammed Shinawi said that the President reviewed progress made in the implementation of the Decent Life Initiative for developing Egyptian villages, as well as National Strategic Plan for Water Desalination. The meeting also probed plans to develop urban communities on the northwestern coast, as well as Housing Ministry's initiatives, including the 10th path of the nation's home initiative designed for Egyptian expatriates, among other projects. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration and Expatriate Affairs Badr Abdulati took part on Wednesday in the Oslo Forum in Norway. He joined foreign ministers of Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia and Oman at the annual Peace Forum. The meeting was held behind closed doors in Lawrence, some 15 kilometers outside the Norwegian capital. The foreign minister also attended a dialogue session entitled Different Middle East Future over Means to Put an End to Israeli Aggression in Gaza and Restore Truce and Stability in the region. The top diplomat will hold a series of bilateral meetings on the sideline of the Forum for Enhancing Bilateral Relations between Egypt and Norway. On the sidelines of Oslo Forum, Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan viewed recent regional and international developments, namely the Palestinian cause and the Israeli aggression in Gaza Strip and West Bank. The meeting also discussed activities of Arab Islamic Ministerial Committee and next steps to be taken in support for the Palestinian people, with the top diplomats reiterating a full rejection to the displacement of Palestinians from their lands. The two foreign ministers also reviewed means to enhance joint economic and investment cooperation. Israeli occupation forces killed at least 35 Palestinians in Gaza Strip on Wednesday. 25 of the dead were killed at 8 sites operated by the Israeli and U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The United Nations have refused to cooperate with the GHF, saying it violates humanitarian principles by forcing Palestinians to relocate to just 3 currently operational sites. Details in the following report.
Gaza. They added that 10 other people were killed in other Israeli military strikes in Khan Yunis and the south of the enclave. On Tuesday, Gaza health officials said 17 people were killed near another such site in Rafah in southern Gaza. Palestinian Health Ministry said at least 163 people have been killed, and figures reliable.
Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait praised the sanctions imposed by Britain and other nations against 2 Israeli cabinet members accused of repeatedly inciting violence against Palestinians. Abul Ghait said the move helps rein in Israeli officials who encourage settler attacks against Palestinians with impunity. Britain's Foreign Ministry on Tuesday announced the Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich and National Security Minister Ben Jafir will be banned from entering the UK and will have any assets in the country frozen. Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway also imposed fresh measures against the ministers as the Israeli government faces growing international condemnations over its war conduct. Los Angeles police swiftly enforced a downtown curfew Tuesday night, marking arrests moments after it took effect while deploying officers on horseback and using crowd control projectiles to break up a group of hundreds of demonstrating against President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Hours later, many of the protesters had expressed, although sporadic confrontations continued that was much smaller than in previous nights. Officials said that the curfew was necessary to stop vandalism and theft by agitators looking to cause trouble. Democratic government Gavin Newsom earlier accused Trump of drawing a military dragon across the nation's second largest city with his escalating use of the National Guard. He also deployed the Marines, though none were seen on the streets today. Iran's defense minister threatened today to target U.S. military bases in the region if a conflict breaks out. The threats come days ahead of the planned sixth round of Iran-U.S. nuclear talks on Sunday. U.S. President Donald Trump said he was less confident about reaching a nuclear deal, however, had previously expressed optimism about the talks. Iran and the U.S. have held 5 rounds of talks since April to discuss a new nuclear deal to replace the 2015 accord that Trump abandoned during his first term in 2018. Diplomats said that European powers and the United States submitted a resolution to the UN's Nuclear Watchdog Board on Tuesday condemning Iran's non-compliance with its nuclear obligations. It is the latest move in Western pressure on Tehran to restrict Iran's nuclear activities. The diplomatic maneuver comes as the United States and Tehran have held several rounds of talks mediated by Oman aimed at securing an agreement on limiting Iran's nuclear program in exchanging for sanctions relief. Paris, Berlin, London and Washington formally tabled the resolution as at this week's board meeting of the Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency, which is expected to come to vote on Wednesday evening at earliest. Russia said today it stood ready to remove highly enriched uranium from Iran and convert it into civilian reactor fuel as a potential way to help narrow U.S.-Iranian differences last week. The Kremlin said Russian President Vladimir Putin had told Trump in a phone call that he was ready to use his country's close partnership with Iran to help advance those negotiations. Also, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister told Russian media that efforts to reach a solution should be redoubted and that Moscow was willing to help in practical ways. Police in Ukraine said the fresh Russian strikes on Ukraine's northeastern city of Kharkiv killed 3 people and wounded 60, including children, early Wednesday as Moscow pushed ahead with its relentless attacks after rejecting an unconditional ceasefire. Russia has escalated its bombardments of Ukraine in recent days after Kyiv launched attacks deep inside Russian territory. Kharkiv, which lies less than 50 kilometers from the Russian border, had been hit by the surge in Russian attacks. Russia's new ambassador to Washington was quoted as saying that talks between the United States and Russia on resolving issues in their bilateral relations will move to Moscow from Istanbul. Ambassador Alexander Darchev told the state TASS news agency that the recovery of Russian-American relations, it is still a long way off. The war in Ukraine triggered the biggest confrontation between Moscow and the West since the depths of the Cold War. The administration of U.S. President Donald Trump casts the Ukraine conflict as a proxy war between the United States and Russia, and Trump was repeatedly warned of the risk of it escalating into the World War. Now with the economy news, as Egypt's bourse closed higher today amid purchases of foreign investment funds and Arab investors against sell-offs by foreign investors and Arab corporations. The market capital of listed companies added 2 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 2.3 trillion pounds at the end of the transactions that stood at 71 billion pounds. The benchmark EGX30 rose 0.1% above the 32,000-point mark. Equal weighted indices EGX 30 and 70 and the EGX 100 climbed 0.1% and 0.2% respectively. Top officials from the United States and China said that they had agreed on the framework to move forward to trade following 2 days of high-level talks in London to resolve tensions. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick expressed optimism after a full day of negotiations that concerns surrounding rare earth minerals and magnets will be resolved eventually as the deal is implemented. However, this framework will first need to be approved by leaders in Washington and Beijing at the end of the meetings at the British capital, London. The world's two biggest economies were seeking a longer-lasting truce in their escalating tariffs war, with the levies currently only temporarily on hold.
不确定性的挑战。
FIFA President Gianni Infantino hailed Cairo Giants Al Ahly as a historic club and expressed his enthusiasm for the participation in the opening match of the 2025 Club World Cup against Inter Miami, set to take place on the 14th of June in the United States. Infantino highly appreciated Al Ahly's. Brazil booked their place at the 2026 World Cup in North America with 1-0 home victory over Paraguay, the first win of Carlo Ancelotti's region. In other games, Uruguay edged closer to qualification with their win over Venezuela, while Chile were eliminated with a defeat to Bolivia. Argentina, who have already... Well, now this, my dear viewers, we come to the end of the news bulletin. My name is Amal Mukhtar. Thank you for watching.